Hello and welcome to episode 545 of the Yellow Wall Pods. I'm your host from Butzko, and today we'll preview the upcoming season, including some predictions, and we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's performance in the Supercup, and we will take a look at the Bundesliga curtain raiser against Hamburger Sportverein. For all that and more, I'm joined, as you can see on YouTube, by Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well myself. Had a day off today, so I am very relaxed. And also here, Lars Baumann. Hello, Lars. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. I'm going on vacation tomorrow, so it's a mixture of excitement, but also that little bit of apprehension when you go somewhere for the first time. But, that's part of the deal.
Where are you going?
Brussels. Somewhat
Nice.
randomly, because you can go from Dortmund to Brussels via the Eurostar.
Well, I'm excited to hear about your trip later. In the meantime, though, there was a glorified friendly, let's call it what it is, after all. With the Super Cup, there are certain highlights and lowlights we can discuss for a little bit. Matthias, I'll give you the stage to discuss the highlights first, because I hate, instantly jumping into the negative part of the game, because I thought there were some that we can talk about, and be my guest to discuss anything that you liked to begin with about this game, because I personally came out of it pretty optimistic overall.
I like the second half. I think Dortmund's second half was much better. I feel like they finally woke up. Unfortunately, they woke up when they were already down 2 goals. And I think you could say they were unlucky to not get an equalizer overall. I think the positive out of it is we've got some Greek magic in the side. Both Konstantelius and Karetsas impressed me. They played really, really well. Joey Wehrmann really didn't get much opportunity to shine. So the jury's still out on that, and I have my opinions as to why. But overall, I thought the new signings did okay to very, very good. I think defensively, Dortmund have work to do, but I kind of expected that without Schlotterbeck. Bayern played like Bayern play. I mean, they've got some of the best players in the world on their side. I mean, Kane is always dangerous. Michael Olise is an absolutely fantastic player, and you could just see how well-oiled their machinery is, whereas Dortmund is still trying to find their way in certain aspects. But it was an entertaining match. If you look at the entire 90 minutes, I was first worried it wouldn't be, because Bayern in the first half were clearly the better side. And the nice thing for Dortmund is I trust Gregor Kobel now more than I would trust Manuel Neuer in a match. But no, overall it was for what the Super Cup is. It was entertaining. Unfortunately, didn't get the right result in the end. I also, what I thought was really good was Dortmund. You didn't even really notice that they got a red card, because they just kept playing. I mean, I thought, okay, it's time to crumble, and Bayern are just going to score a couple more goals, but that really wasn't the case at all. So, no, there are a lot of really good positives. I also really enjoyed that Karetsas, I forget, they had a really good scoring opportunity, and he was firing up the fans to be louder. And for a teenager who just joined, that's a really great thing to see.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Greek duo. They did get to play 17 minutes together as Konstantelias joined in the second half. And what was your impression of course, the new signings, but especially Konstantelias, since he basically just joined Dortmund and also more or less had like 1 or 2 training sessions before he played in that game?
Well, first of all, I was kind of surprised to see him get 45 minutes because, as you mentioned, he only really trained with the team one time. I'm sure he won't know everyone's first name, basically, at this point, because, it's quite a big squad these days. So surprised in that regard, but I think it made sense to hook Samuel Inácio, who just didn't have much of an impact on the game, which is understandable because he's still an 18-year-old teenager. We mustn't forget that he had his debut against Bayern, what was it, like half a year ago, and now he starts in a somewhat important fixture. So it's to be expected that there are some growing pains still, and maybe I would have expected them as well with Konstantelius, because he basically has never played against opposition at the level of FC Bayern, I don't think. I don't know whom he played with Greece. Maybe he played against a top nation there, but certainly in the Greek league, there are no FC Bayerns to be facing. And keeping that in mind, I thought he did about as good as you could hope for. You saw the technical ability that everyone kind of saw when they watched highlight videos of him. I think a couple of the first touches were very much as advertised. And obviously his involvement in Dortmund's lone goal on the day also kind of gave you a glimpse of what he might be able to do, because obviously he dribbled a little bit, opened up the space for Daniel Svensson on the left. And because Daniel Svensson played on the left and could use his correct foot, if that makes sense, he played the cutback pass to Fabio Silva, and Fabio Silva scored a striker's goal, which obviously came as a surprise to me and probably a lot of Dortmund fans, because it's not really his want. So Konstantelius basically did as well as he could, given the circumstances. Carezas was all right, I would say. Didn't have too much of an impact for most of the game, but again, when you're an attacking player for Dortmund against Bayern, that can happen. I think we should probably highlight Joan Gadou, at least defensively, because there were a number of times when he was basically defending one-on-one versus Luis Diaz, who is obviously one of the best attackers he will face all season, and Gadou held his own defensively. I think in possession on the ball, there were still a few too many instances of him just hoofing the ball upwards and Dortmund losing possession. That is also kind of the biggest negative about the game in general, especially in the first half. They lost the ball way too much. I think Gregor Kobel, while Matthias is correct in saying that he's probably a better shot stopper than Manuel Neuer these days, his distribution, especially against Bayern for whatever reason, is always terrible, and once again was terrible in this game. And Gadou lost too many balls as well, and when you have those two guys combining, if that makes sense, and Joe Bellingham putting in a terrible performance, am I allowed to say that? Then Dortmund are losing the ball a bit too much. So I was certainly hoping at halftime to see Joey Veerman relatively soon. Obviously, he came on for Felix Metscher, which a lot of people have a lot of opinions about, but I'm pretty sure, and Nico Kovac basically said it, that it's only load management at this point of the season, because Felix Metscher came a bit later from post-World Cup vacation, so it's not all panic stations as of yet in regards to what Joey Veerman and Felix Metscher and Joe Bellingham, how that conundrum is going to work out. But at the end of the day, I think for a Supercup in which they played in FC Bayern, I would say one of the three best sides in the world, and they're probably not third. And the amount of turnover that Dortmund have had over the summer, I come away from this game pretty much encouraged as you are, Stefan.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that Konstantelius had a amazing first impression. Obviously Bayern looked a little bit more like they were stepping off the gas in the second half, and there were certainly spaces for him to attack, which is nice. But still, to as you said, have so many consistently good first touches, but also just a lot of ball security. The movement on the ball just looks very good. Even if he's not Adeyemi fast, he also looks certainly pretty quick, and you could instantly see that him and Carezas are looking out for each other, that there's instantly the connection, that they are seeking each other on the field, and that's a connection that I hope we will see much more of, and got me really, really exciting for this season, because you just have two high IQ players in midfield now that can make a lot of shit happen. So I think it's going to be fun, honestly. Do we see a lot of tendencies that Dortmund had in the previous seasons where they struggle, especially in their positional play in possession? Yes. I am also frustrated that Dortmund did not find all the solutions, playing the ball out of the back and trying to find Guirassy with a lot of long balls, and just it felt like a lot of clearances could have also just been passes. and the positional cohesion wasn't how I would like it, for sure. But still, a lot of scapegoating was certainly done for Joe Bellingham, who objectively had a horrible game. But my hope is that he can improve a little bit going forward, because that was certainly not a performance you want to see. And I wonder how he will deal with all the headlines coming out of a game like this, because if pretty much every newspaper has your name in the headline highlighting your horrific performance, certainly not easy for a young kid. And I hope that Maxi Bayer will recover from this horrible miss at the end. Not entirely sure how he managed to hoof that one over. Maybe it is still the aura of Manuel Neuer. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but that was especially after a really good first touch. I'm not entirely sure if Waldemar Anton tried to pass him the ball or if that was an attempted shot. But either way, from that position to miss point blank was quite frustrating. And I'm very annoyed that Bayern had their stupid kakadu out there. I think that bird needs to be killed. We need to get rid of that. So that's of course the outlook for our season, is to somehow kill that shitty bird. But in the meantime, I think we can be pretty excited about a lot of things. Like you guys also said, Gadu, a lot of imposing tackles in the end. I really like the one, I think, in the 75th minute, when it looked like Diaz was already past him and he still managed to recover and just, get rid of him more or less. So that was pretty cool. But we can also see that Dortmund ideally still do a couple of things in the defense. On the one end, Ben Sebaini, certainly with the red card. I'm not sure if you guys want to discuss it or not, if it was a red card or not. I think the impact will be that he will be probably suspended for the DFB Pokal. I remember back in the day where Kimmich stamped on Sancho's foot and did not get a red card in the Supercup, and there the contention was whether he would be suspended for the Bundesliga. But I think they switched those rules, and now players would be rather suspended for the DFB Pokal than the league. So he would be out for maybe 1 or 2 cup matches, but how long he will be out just from that bruised rib, we don't know, because Anton got him pretty well with the knee into the rib cage, and so he'll probably not going to play on Saturday one way or another. That's something for us to discuss a little bit later. Also, there are more rumors about Dortmund signing Hector Ford, 20-year-old La Masia product from Barcelona, who played on loan for Elche last season. He doesn't have much perspective to play ahead of Koundé in this season, and we're now reporting that Dortmund are trying to pay a base fee of around 10 million euros, and that this will then sort of get jazzed up to about 17 with bonuses, and potentially there's a hefty sell-on clause in the negotiations. But as I said, it's all being negotiated right now. There were reports of Dortmund having a delegation in Barcelona, but these have already been debunked. So we'll see what happens, and if by the time we get around for the next episode, if Dortmund have signed him as their new right back or not. But in the meantime, I think it's time to start with our season predictions, because it is that time of the season. And Lars, why don't we go with you first, and then Matthias. Will Dortmund finish with more, fewer, or the same amount of points in the Bundesliga as last season, which were 73? Which is something I'm very intrigued, because I think that's a very good benchmark to measure whether we expect Dortmund to actually improve in the Bundesliga or not.
I think 73 was the third best season since Jürgen Klopp left. They were better once under Thomas Tuchel and once under Lucien Favre. So it's a pretty high benchmark considering how long Jürgen Klopp has now left Dortmund. So I'm going to say lower, but not by too much.
Okay. Matthias?
I'm going to say push. Yeah, I mean, that's a really high number to exceed, as Lars just pointed out. But I feel like it's going to be higher points. Not by much, but I think another question category that we have will also be higher. And we'll get to that. But I think a couple of extra points will be in there. I think there are a few matches that Dortmund would like to have back, and maybe they can even steal a point off of Bayern. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, that would be nice. It would also make a big difference for the upcoming category. But I would say slightly lower. I think Dortmund will be probably around 70, 71, 72 points again. But I would say it's obviously not a category, but I think those 70 points or however much it will be at the end will be a little bit easier on the eye. But I have a little bit of concerns about the defensive frailties, but that's obviously also another category. Lars, how big will be the gap to FC Bayern at the end of the season? Last season, the gap was 16 points in the end. Maybe a little bit skewed as Dortmund, I don't know if they took the foot off the gas, but I felt like in February it was certainly much closer, especially going into the last matchup in the direct duel against Bayern. But do you think that Bayern will improve somehow, or give Dortmund even more trouble in terms of points, or do you think that they can actually close down that gap?
I think the only way for Bayern to improve would be the second only ever invincible season in the Bundesliga, because they were beaten once by Augsburg last season, and obviously only Bayer Leverkusen have actually managed to go a full season unbeaten. I think that is probably a target for Bayern at some point, but I also think that they kind of have their eyes set on the Champions League now that Harry Kane is somewhat slowing down in terms of just his age, so I don't think they can look at the Champions League in, let's say, 2028 or whatever as their target. So I'm pretty sure they are going to look at that and maybe rotate their squad a little bit. So I said that Dortmund are going to end up with a few fewer points in the Bundesliga. I'm going to say that Bayern also have a few fewer points than last season because they, take a bit more of a Champions League first approach. So it's probably going to stay just about the same. So what was it last season, you said?
16.
Let's say 15 then.
Okay.
So success for Dortmund, 15 points.
Matthias, do you think we'll have a bit more of a title race on our hands this year?
I think there will be that period of time when all Dortmund fans have a glimmer of hope, and then that glimmer of hope will die miserably. I also think the point gap will shrink a little bit. Given that I said Dortmund are going to get more points, I agree with Lars that Bayern are going to get a few less points. So let's call it 12 points.
All right. I mean, that would make things maybe a little bit more interesting. We'll see how it shakes out. I mean, if Dortmund are, having a poor start to the season, then and then make up ground later, it's not going to be exciting as if Dortmund, really give Bayern a run for their money. But there are also certainly other teams in the league that are vying for the top spots. We'll see how that pans out. But one big question I have, of course, is whether Dortmund would actually score more than 70 goals in the league this season, because that was not the highest benchmark. Bayern obviously scored 122. I think that's the new Bundesliga record or so. It was a ridiculous amount. But nevertheless, my prediction is yes, Dortmund will score more than 70 league goals this season. Matthias, what do you think?
I agree. I think Dortmund has, given their now more creative attacking output as the players that they have, it's not just purely being direct all the time, and maybe more creativity from behind, more consistent creativity. I think getting around that 80, just over 80 goal mark is definitely in the cards for Dortmund this season.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Lars.
Because I think they might be a little bit less solid defensively. They might have to score a few more goals. So maybe some of those 1-0, 2-1 victories turn into, 4-3s or whatever. So I'm going to go, as you guys did, with a little more than 70, but they are not going to challenge Bayern for, the scoring crown or anything.
Yeah, probably not. But who knows? Maybe Dortmund have a breakout season and Bayern have some key injuries, and then things could switch, of course. But that's a lot of ifs, honestly. But yeah, Lars, since you just said whether Dortmund will concede more, less goals than last season, or fewer rather, it was 34, and that was the best defensive benchmark, at least in terms of goals conceded in the last season. And I don't even know when the last time was that Dortmund conceded on average 1 goal per game or fewer. So I too struggle with that, but I assume your prediction is that Dortmund will concede quite a few more this season.
I don't know about quite a few, but a few, because we have to kind of assume that they will regularly play with at least 3 teenagers in the starting 11 in Gadu, Carezas, maybe Nasio, some of the other young guys. We already know about injuries to Schlotterbeck and Ercan. I think it's going to be, the goal should probably be, 40 or fewer, and that is probably realistic and, a reasonable benchmark, because usually teams, even good teams, don't only concede 1 per game. And obviously when you have to play Bayern twice, that might rack up a few. So I'm going to say, 39 or so.
I'm saying 41, Matthias.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like I said on the scoring, I'm going to benchmark it around 80. I think this one I'd benchmark around 40 plus minus 1. So you're both right.
All right. We will see about that. These are predictions, and I'm known to be wrong very often. So so wrong I can't even say the word. But Matthias, you already teased it a little bit. Who will be the season's top scorer? And I would say not just in the Bundesliga, but all competitions. Girassi was in last season with 22 goals in all competitions, which, isn't the highest number. Honestly, we've seen a stronger output from Dortmund strikers or, scorers in previous seasons. But is it going to be Girassi again, or do you think someone else will take that spot?
Provided he stays, I think Guirassy will be the top scorer. I mean, he's the starting striker. I think he will get more opportunities given the players that are around him and their abilities to provide him with high success chance scoring opportunities to score his types of goals. So I think Guirassy will be the top scorer. I think there are good chances that he's going to score more than that. I wouldn't be surprised if he, gets 25 plus goals this season. So yeah, I mean, I don't really see anybody else challenging him unless, of course, he goes and you get a top quality striker in place. That's not saying that Fabio Silva is not that guy, but I'm kind of saying Fabio Silva is not that guy. In that sense, not that he's a bad player, he's just not as prolific. And I think that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, us all being somewhat surprised that Fabio Silva was in the right place at the right time when the ball was crossed into the box tells you everything you need to know about his striker play. I mean, he has a lot of qualities, but yeah, let's say he's not the number 1 goal getter you think of if you think about goal getters. So there you go. I'm saying, and also due to the fact that I have to account for deeper runs in other competitions, that Girassi will be A, the top scorer, and B, I think he will hit the 30 goal mark this season because I think, especially in the first half of the season, last season, he was not performing much, and I think he'll have a much better chance to score more goals. I mean, Dortmund, I think, what was their average, like 7 shots on goal per game or something like that, or maybe even lower. They just didn't have a lot of chance creation overall in the last season, and I think that will be higher. So with that, I think Girassi will A, be the top scorer, and B, I think he will shatter the 30 goal mark in all competitions, that is. Lars?
I'm wondering what you've seen, both of you actually, from Serhou Guirassy over the last, I don't know, 14 months that makes you so comfortable in saying he's going to score more than 30. But obviously, it is a prediction, and you are well within your rights to make it. I think the process of elimination leads you to zero Girassi, because the only other realistic option would be Fabio Silva, and he's just not the most natural goal scorer. I will say I thought about, what would my hot take for the season be, and it would probably be that it's not going to be zero Girassi, because of what Matthias mentioned initially, and that is if he stays. I think there's a non-zero chance that Girassi doesn't finish the season in Dortmund. I don't know that, in the last week or so of the transfer market, he's going to be sold, because usually you don't want to have that massive of a change in your, presumed starting 11. But would it shock any of us if Girassi left in the January window? I don't think so, especially if, he maybe doesn't fire on all cylinders in the first half of the season. Maybe Fabio Silva takes a little bit of his playing time. He has a lot of wages on Dortmund's book, so my hot take would be that Zero Girassi doesn't finish the season with Dortmund. I don't know if he might not still be the top scorer because there's nobody else. But, the process of elimination says Girassi is going to end up with most goals, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to 30.
All right. I mean, in fairness, I have the imagination that, maybe Fabio Silva or even the Maximilian Bayer maybe mesh better with this team, and maybe Girassi will actually have less playing time, and from there on out, things may spiral. So, you may be right, Lars. I am not entirely sure how this is all going to pan out. It's still very early in the season, and Maxi Bayer just had a horrible miss, but nevertheless, I do think that if he doesn't have to have wingback duties, that he also can be often very high attacking threat. And so we'll see how it all pans out. But for now, these are predictions, and I think that Girassi is a little bit underrated, and I think he'll score more. But from goal scorers to assist givers, who will have the most assists? Riasson obviously was the one in the Bundesliga with 15, and overall 18 in all competitions last season. Second most, Bayer, and someone else who I forgot, I think tied with 7 assists. So, Lars, do you have any hot takes here, or is it going to be the obvious choice?
The question is, do you think Carretzas is the obvious choice, or Julian
Yes.
Riasson? I mean, I would actually go with Riasson, because I don't know that the Bundesliga is having the same crackdown on corner kicks as the Premier League has. So I think Dortmund are, unless I'm mistaken there, then I think Dortmund are still going to be very dangerous on set pieces. And given that we basically pencil in Riasson as a full-time starter, whereas Carretzas as an 18-year-old would probably get a bit of rest here and there and might be more injury prone just because he's a younger kid playing a more grueling schedule for the first time in his career, I'm actually going with what I think is the obvious answer, which by your guys' reaction, I think is my singular opinion on this podcast at least, and that is Julian Riasson.
I mean, there's also a good shout for Constantelias, honestly. Matthias, who's your pick?
I was going to say I'm going to go with Greek Magic, and that will be Constantelias. I think he will get the most assists and the most pre-assists, taking an NHL statistic in there, because he did get the pre-assist, of course, for the goal against Bayern. I just think he'll be in more of a position. Now, of course, if Kovac sticks to the, hey, let's just whip in a ton of crosses all the time, then just by the lottery of it all, Riasson will probably have more opportunity for assists. But I'm strongly hoping that that's not the case in that sense. When I got reminded of the fact that Riasson had 15 assists, I went, oh, really? I totally forgot about that. So I think Constantelias will have the most assists. It won't be like he'll have 8 or 9 more assists than Riasson, but I think they'll both be in the double-digit realm and pushing that way, just because of set pieces for Riasson, even though Carretzas will also be taking some set pieces, and of course Svensson as well. But then from play, I think Constantelias will have a greater impact and an attacking contribution. when it comes to assists.
Very interesting, very interesting. Well, I can't wait how this pans out. I would say though, I think Carretzas will spam a lot of crosses too from his right half space, and I think Girassi will be there to finish a lot of those at the far post. Think against Bayern he nearly had one of those too, where I think Inacio still almost made contact and threw him a little off, and Girassi was also offside at the same time. But I think this sort of situation will be replicable for Dortmund quite a lot, and so that's something where I see Carretzas excelling. Obviously, we will see how it pans out in terms of pre-assists. Might be Constantinas, honestly, because he is such an influential player from these positions. I'm really intrigued to see how many goals and scorers he will pick up, because you could already see in terms of finishing technique that there were a couple of good ones. I mean, the half volley alone is how many times have we seen Julian Brandt hit these over the Südtribüne? So that was a pretty good strike. Carretzas, I think, nearly had a goal too. That sort of snapshot that Neuer magically saved. So yeah, and Carretzas, of course, also with his trademark cut to the inside. We've seen that against Roma, where he rattled the bar, and of course the goal against Arsenal. But yeah, interesting that no one said Fährmann, because maybe he will get an assist here and there. But yeah, who will be the breakout player of this season, Matthias?
Well, that'll be Carretzas. I just think I know we were kind of messaging back and forth during the match, and maybe it's because I'm on pain meds that I got a little too crazy. But I got, and maybe because he kind of looks very similar to him, but I got kind of prime Mario Götze vibes from Carretzas at times. Just his movement, his pace, his trickery, his youth. I think he kind of is that type of player. And so I think the odds are very much in favor that he will be the breakout player. Now, there are other players I think that will be really, really good. I mean, obviously, Constantelias we talked about. Inacio, I think, will have a decent impact here and there. Luca Reggiani, I don't know what the future is there. Gadou, I think, could have a really good impact, but it's just harder for a defender, especially because he just has way more veteran defenders that are just better than him at this point. And young defenders just make super boneheaded mistakes. You're just going to have to accept that. So I think Carretzas is the odds-on favorite, also because he's so young. He's younger than Constantelia, so it's going to feel like more of a breakout because he's 5 years younger, even though Constantelius is only 23. I think that's really the one. Also because he's kind of that young teenage wonder kid that's now going to be introduced to a larger audience, whereas Constantelius has kind of been around for a little bit. Again, he's not 33, but he's 23. But still, I think Carretzas will be that kind of breakout player.
Lars, do you have a different take?
No, I think basically by design it has to be Carretzas, because obviously it's not a tangible category. It's not like we can look at a stat and say that is the breakout guy. So obviously it skews towards attacking players, just as Matthias mentioned. And I think Constantelias would have to be considerably more impactful than Carretzas for him to be considered a breakout player just because of the age factor. I mean, you could easily convince me that Constantelias will have more of an impact for Dortmund, but he's 23. I don't know how many people will consider him, someone who's just broken out when Carretzas as a teenager has that going for him. So he would have to be or have a somewhat disappointing season, I would say, for it not to be Carretzas.
Yeah, fair. So maybe the next question is maybe a little bit obsolete. Who will be the signing of the summer, Matthias? Since we all say Carretzas is going to be the breakout player, I have a hard time imagining that we're going to have a different name for signing of the summer. Or
actually, I agree with Lars. I think Constantelius will have the bigger impact on the squad overall because he's older. So he's going to be more consistent over the longer term. And here's the thing I was just thinking of. If these two players, barring injuries or anything unforeseen happening, continue their trajectory and Dortmund sell them on, Carretzas is the kind of player that could bag another 100 million euro transfer for Dortmund. Constantelius could play 8 more years at Dortmund and not move on and maybe be sold on for 30, 40 million. So, I mean, that's kind of the scale of economics just because of age and where they came from and kind of hot to trot names. Constantelius wasn't as hotly pursued as Carretzas was more that wonder kid. So I think actually Constantelius will be the bigger impact signing overall than Carretzas, as weird as that sounds.
Interesting, Lars.
I would hope for it to be Joey Fairman, actually, because as I mentioned last week, when you make that investment in a 27-year-old who signed a contract until he's 32, you kind of expect him to have the most immediate tangible impact. I don't know if the opportunity will be there for him. It's very likely either Carretzas or Constantelias, but I could also see a world in which Joan Gadou is a fixture in defense and plays, I don't know, 40 games or for the full 90 minutes, and then it's going to be hard to argue against him. But at the end of the day, most people, again, will skew to the attacking side of things and probably decide between Carretzas and Constantelias. And maybe it's just recency bias and, Constantelias capturing our imagination a little bit against Bayern, because obviously he was a less well-known player than Carretzas, I would say. And also we've seen Carretzas play in two somewhat reasonably informative friendly, let's say. It looks as of right now as if Constantelias might have more of an immediate impact, but it could easily change after a month to Carretzas. So it's a cop-out answer, but one of those two.
I mean, you're obviously right. The sample size is tiny, and also we have not really seen a full game performance. He came out against a team that probably, like I said, shifted down a couple of gears here and there as Bayern were already 2-0 up, and they were not, in that mode yet where they're trying to pile on to make it 5, 6, 7, nothing or whatever. And also, we need to see how it looks when the opponents actually really game plan for, the Greek double, because we haven't seen that yet either, honestly. And there was this moment where Olise didn't really know who Constantelias was when he asked Olise for the shirt swap at the end. So I think that's obviously also going to change going forward. So we'll see. But very intriguing question coming up next. Matthias, I'll have you go first. Who do you think... cut. Will Dortmund end their season with Niko Kovac? Maybe I should ask this first before I ask who you think will be the next coach. But that's something that I'm wondering about, whether Dortmund will have him as a coach at the end of the season or no.
Yes. TLDR, yes. I don't see a reason to make a change because I don't see Dortmund collapsing. Now, if Dortmund collapse and aren't comfortably the second best team in the Bundesliga, then there's a good chance then, of course, he won't finish out the season. But I just don't expect that to happen. So I kind of think Niko Kovac will be there by the end of the season.
Yeah, me too. I think that maybe Dortmund, and by that I mean the front office, would like to have a little bit more dominance in possession. A couple of things we just talked about. Maybe a somewhat different playing style, maybe different philosophy, and maybe there's an opportunity that opens up where they can maybe get a Sebastian Hoeneß from Stuttgart, etc., where things just align and they will make a change. But as of right now, I don't have the imagination that this is actually going to happen and that Dortmund will finish out the season with Niko Kovac. Lars, do you have a different opinion?
Well, maybe history does, because Niko Kovac has suffered a little bit from second season syndrome. For example, at Bayern, I think at Wolfsburg, he also managed to stay beyond his first season. Monaco maybe as well. I don't remember. And obviously Frankfurt was a different case for him. But, the thing is that it would probably take a real collapse for this marriage to end, during the season. I could see, an amicable parting for, the summer of 2027, but that is hard to predict. I kind of feel like it's a foregone conclusion that Kovac is going to get a new contract relatively soon, and that will make, the entire discussion a bit of a moot point, because they are not going to give him a new contract and then turn around half a year later, unless things go catastrophically wrong. Hard to say. So yeah, he's probably going to end the season with Dortmund, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's nailed on that he's also the head coach on the first match day of the season that comes after.
Yeah, I still would like to see, for example, a Fabian Hützler as a Dortmund coach, but we'll see if that's still going to be on the cards or not. But yeah, let's talk about the final positions for Dortmund this season. Obviously, the Champions League draw is this Thursday, so this is going to be a very wild guess. And of course, DFB Pokal, you also never know how that bracket actually looks, because it's not really a bracket as they draw each round. So let's start with the Bundesliga position. I'm saying bang on P2 again, similar to last season, which I hope is something that Dortmund at the minimum reach, because if not, it will be a little bit embarrassing, honestly. But Matthias, do you think that there are other teams that can threaten Dortmund's second place, or that Dortmund even go one higher?
Well, I mean, I would hope Dortmund could go one higher. But one higher, of course, means Bayern need to kind of collapse. And I just don't know. I mean, if they do what Lars suggests, that they're going to rotate more, then I think they're going to be more points drop. But then Dortmund have to be, honestly, pretty much perfect. I think Dortmund will be second. They'll be comfortably second-ish. I do believe there's one very obvious choice for a side that could push Dortmund for second, and that's unfortunately Leipzig again. I don't really see any other Bundesliga clubs currently being in that zone. I think it's, Dortmund, Leipzig, and then above them, Bayern. I think below, it'll be one of those seasons where the final Champions League spot will be really a tight race. But I think the top three will be relatively, I'm not going to say easy, but more comfortable. I just don't see that massive challenge. But Leipzig is the one where, if somebody could do it, I really believe they're the most likely candidate. Unless, of course, Bayern challenged Dortmund for second place, in which, Dortmund jumped to first place.
Yeah, interesting. Lars, do you think it's going to be anything outside of second place?
Well, first of all, I think we need to look a little bit in the past, Stefan, and make amends. Because last season, when we did our... Yeah, that's right, Stefan. Last season, when we did the previews, I said fifth, but took the cowardly way of saying, what if they do something on deadline day or towards deadline day, then I might revise that. And then obviously they did a little bit of transfer business. Stefan, you said seventh, and Matthias said second. And obviously only one of us knows what they are talking about. I'm actually agreeing.
It's because I'm so damn old. That's why.
Maybe. But I'm the second oldest of us three by a few months towards Stefan. I have wisened up, and I'm going to agree with Matthias that Dortmund are finishing second again. But I actually think Leipzig are candidates for, a bit of a disappointment again, because they didn't play European football last season, and they really were nowhere close to Dortmund. They lost Jan Diomande to Real Madrid and haven't really replaced him. I think as of right now, the most likely option for them is to loan back Christopher Nkunku from AC Milan. He hasn't done anything of note since leaving Leipzig. I'm not so sure I think Martin Demichelis is the solution to all their problems. They no longer have whatever Jürgen Klopp added to the Leipzig Red Bull Imperium. So I actually think VfB Stuttgart are the third best team in Germany as of right now. And I think the big unknown for all of us is Bayer Leverkusen, because they have a new coach who nobody really knows anything about, because he was at Toulouse, I think. And I'm holding my hand up for everyone to see. I don't watch Toulouse ever. I couldn't tell you that I've watched them a single time. I think their jerseys are kind of purple, violet, or something like that, but that might even be wrong. But long story short, I think Dortmund are comfortably the second best team in the Bundesliga, and I don't see any reason why they shouldn't finish second in the league, unless they have a magical Champions League run and kind of put all their eggs in that basket.
Yeah, fair. Like I said, I think Dortmund will comfortably finish second as well. And I agree with you. I right now think that Stuttgart might be a bit more of a threat to Dortmund than Leipzig, but you obviously never know. Same thing goes to Hoffenheim. I'm not entirely sure how they're going to fare. I've not really taken a look whether they had a big sellout this summer, or fire sale rather, or not. But they finished in fifth place, and they were definitely trending upward toward the second half of the season. So I don't know if they will build on that or not, especially with Europa League football and of course Bayer Leverkusen, also another wild card. And another question mark I have for Eintracht Frankfurt, a team that I assumed would finish in the Champions League spots or close to them last season, but in the end they had 47 points and were 8th behind Freiburg. So not entirely sure if they are going to have a comeback or not. But as of right now, my top 4 prediction would be Bayern, Dortmund, Stuttgart, and then Leipzig. To be honest, Matthias, do you have a different outcome in the top 4?
Yeah, I think those 4 are the ones that I would pick, because Leverkusen, who knows? Hoffenheim, I tend to try desperately to forget they exist. And I don't think Frankfurt are going to rebound to the heights they were just a couple of seasons ago. I just don't see that happening. I think there's too much dysfunction there, also around the club. So I think it'll be kind of in that sphere, Bayern, Dortmund, and then Leipzig and Stuttgart kind of pushing third, fourth, and then maybe Leverkusen pushing in, just because they have a talented squad. Should be pushing fifth, fourth, kind of where Leverkusen have been before Xabi Alonso came along. That's kind of where I see things shaking out.
Yeah, Lars, your top 4 and maybe your bottom 3.
Bayern, Dortmund, Stuttgart, Leverkusen. I'm just not convinced by Leipzig. And my bottom 3, this time once again mentioning that it's before deadline day and a lot can happen. Last season, HSV at this point didn't have Luka Vuskovic, Zambi Lokonga, or Fabio Vieira, and those 3 obviously completely changed their season. So that the same thing could happen to any of these teams, but I think Paderborn in 18th, they just don't seem to have, the quality. I think Elversberg are a lot better. I'm actually picking Elversberg to stay up, but I don't really know who's going down then. Union Berlin, they kind of have hovered over the lower spots. I don't know nothing about their new head coach. They might lose Ilyas Ansar, their best scorer from last season, I think, to, what is it, Hull City. And then 16th, Werder Bremen. I don't buy the Niklas Füllkrug return hype. The squad seems unbalanced. I don't know if Daniel Thun is a top-level coach. And as of right now, I think I'm picking Elversberg to save themselves completely, and Bremen to have to go into relegation playoffs.
All right, interesting. My bottom 3 would be Paderborn at the bottom as well. I have Werder Bremen going down directly, and relegation would be Elversberg. Matthias?
Yeah, so I think also Paderborn last. I just don't think there's remotely enough quality there.
I want to give a quick shout out to Borussia Mönchengladbach, though. I think they are
I was going to
also.
say, I think Gladbach are going to struggle. I think Mainz are going to struggle. I think Union Berlin is kind of an unknown one. I think even though I don't think Schalke are going to be relegated, I think they're definitely going to be in a dogfight kind of down there.
Can I just say I completely forgot Schalke were up in the Bundesliga, so I might, which is a good thing for a Dortmund podcast. But I would perhaps change my prediction, but now it's out here. I'm not going to do that. But I wanted to say I legitimately forgot that Schalke were promoted.
Yeah, I think Bremen will be slightly better off than Schalke. I always kind of don't know what to make of Augsburg, to be perfectly honest.
They'll finish ninth again, as always.
Yeah, they'll be somewhere in the middle. But I think if you're really going to push me to put names on there, I think Paderborn will be last. I think then, oh gosh, I'd probably say Schalke and Elversberg kind of battling out for the last relegation spot, and then the relegation playoff spot. And Mainz and Gladbach also having a very nervous season because I just don't really think Gladbach have much.
Yeah, I'm intrigued about this race, and yeah, for me it's a little bit of wishful thinking that Schalke do not get relegated, honestly, because I like the Revier Derby and I would like to play another two in the season following. So let's see about that. But obviously, one of the relegation candidates for sure is also HSV, our next opponent, the Topspiel. Lars, I'll be honest, I've not really watched anything of Hamburg so far. I think you at least observed a little bit what they just did in the cup, where they did manage to close out fair. But what can we expect from an opponent that gave Dortmund a really interesting game? I think I nominated as sort of the most fun match of the last season, a 3-2 comeback that is from the Black and Yellows. So what do we expect this time around? And, what kind of lineup do you think Kovac will cook up?
HSV actually gave Dortmund two close run games last season. The 1-1 draw in Hamburg, in which I think Königsdörfer later on scored the equalizer. He's gone to Mainz now. And then the 3-2 win with 3 penalties, one of which Felix Metscher missed in the first half. In Dortmund. As you mentioned, Hamburg beat Ferl in the end, convincingly going by result, but certainly in the first half, in which I looked at a little bit, they had a few issues. Ferl had chances. It wasn't like you could see, this complete gap in quality. And quality, I think, is a pretty good buzzword for HSV because they've lost a lot of it. Obviously, Vuskovic was only on loan from Tottenham. He's now been sold on to Brighton. They have, as of recording, not re-signed Fabio Vieira from Arsenal. They are still working on the deal, but it looks like if that's going to happen, it's going to happen on deadline day or very close to deadline day. So they are missing their 2 best players from last season, I would say, maybe throwing in the goalkeeper Heuer Fernandes. And replace them in defense with Sebastian Bornau from, I think he came from Leeds now. Obviously, very well known to regular Bundesliga watchers because he played a few years here for different clubs. I think he was at Cologne before going to England, if memory serves. He's very tall, maybe as much of a presence as Vuskovic in the air, but everything else he's just worse at, I would say. And in attack, they've signed Patson Daka of Leicester, who used to have, a very good nose for goal at RB Salzburg, but has kind of lost his way since moving to England. So I think Hamburg are a bit of a question mark to me right now. Also going for like the full season, I wouldn't be surprised if Hamburg had that typical second season after promotion in which it can be more difficult, even though statistically speaking, that isn't actually a thing. But the good thing is, obviously, this is the kind of opponent that Dortmund shouldn't, have to take too much into account when game planning, if that makes sense. It's a home game against a team that will fight presumably relegation this season, so it's more about what Dortmund do than what the opponent does. I think the lineup and the approach should be fairly similar to what Niko Kovac did against Bayern, certainly in the second half. I think the experiment with inverted wing backs probably come and gone, because obviously they switched back to their natural positions in the second half, and Dortmund were much better for it, including, as I mentioned earlier, the assist by Svensson for the goal by Fabio Silva. Obviously, we don't know about Benzibaini because of his rib injury, as you mentioned earlier, Stefan. So that might give an opportunity to Filippo Mane, who I hope has a better experience against a Hamburg-based team on matchday 1 of the season than last season, because obviously he was sent off in that somewhat embarrassing 3-3 draw against St. Pauli, who were later relegated. And all season, I don't know how many more goals they scored, certainly not many. They might also play Luca Reggiani, because Mane mostly played as a central defender in preseason and in his previous appearances for Dortmund, so I don't know about that. Bellingham certainly did enough to lose his starting spot, but I don't know if Kovac is going to drop him just like that. Joey Fairman came on for Felix Metscher, and Kovac kind of spoke as if he considers those two and more of, not similar players necessarily from a stylistical profile, but because, they are more ball players, let's say, whereas he considers Bellingham and Sabitzer to be the more defensive midfielder type of player. I don't know about that. And then I think, Constantelias played so well after one training session. So what will he do after 1 week? Maybe he replaces Inacio, but also, Inacio has spent the entirety of preseason with the team, and coaches sometimes want to reward that sort of thing. And obviously Constantelias had an impact off the bench, and it might be wise to do the same against Hamburg. And then maybe the most pressing thing, because Fabio Silva kind of talked about maybe wanting to leave in so many words after the game. Maybe he gets another chance to start the game, because obviously he came on, he scored against Bayern, and the team looked much better with him than with Guirassy. Maybe he can get a streak going against one of the weaker opponents in the Bundesliga. So those are kind of my thoughts, but quite honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same exact 11, depending on Benzibaini's availability.
Yeah, Matthias, do you have any wishes for the lineup, or any changes in mind that you think might benefit Dortmund, or do you think that the same or similar lineup to the Bayern game will also take care of business, which can obviously not mutually exclusive things?
I mean, my big wish will not happen, and that is to not play with a back three. I think this lineup, in my opinion, would be better set up with a back four and a 3-man central midfield pairing in some form, whether it's 2-1 or 1-2. I have huge question marks behind Bellingham. I know I kept writing to you that, is he a transfer flop? I think at this point, in my opinion, he is. He is not worth the money that Dortmund paid for him. I think if they paid half as much, I'd still be disappointed. If he is being banked on as being the defensive midfielder, Dortmund have problems. Because what I saw over and over again against Bayern was, with the setup, with the formation that Kovac put out there, Dortmund neither controlled the flanks nor the center. And I don't know if people know a lot about football, but if you don't control the flanks or the center, you kind of control nothing. And while, of course, Hamburg are not Bayern, and Hamburg also, I believe, play with a back three. So it'll be a different game in that sense, and Dortmund should have more possession and more control of the match. I think it's actually a kind of match that you would want a Joey Veerman out there for the ability to, through his passing, break through Hamburg. I'd like to see him match up with Constantelias, but it's still really early for those two players, so I wouldn't expect them to start. I think we'll probably see more or less the exact same lineup that we saw in the Supercup. And then probably in 2-3 weeks, you'll start seeing those changes where Wehrmann and Constantelias will be playing in the starting 11, depending on how everyone around them performs. Sabitzer, okay, fine. I mean, he's still there. I just have that question mark. I know Mecha is more of a ball progressor than Bellingham is, but I wouldn't necessarily want him pushing forward as much, especially if you really just have two central midfielders, because I think that you're just going to be far too exposed, and I just don't trust Bellingham at this point. I mean, it was his amazing pass that led to a Bayern goal. I mean, it was just he completely opened up his own defense through a pass that should never have been played.
I mean, that was the second pass that Bayern actually punished.
Yes.
There was another,
Yes.
even probably more egregious one beforehand, earlier in the half. So yeah, but I'll be honest, I think it's a pretty sensitive subject because you don't want to burn this kid right away after one really horrible performance, and he has shown signs of progress as well in the past. So I personally, I would actually advocate for another start, not because I'm saying he is so much deserved one after the last performance, but just because of, say, bigger picture and playing a little bit of politics here and there. But yeah, I can understand every Dortmund fan who says, let's not start him after that one. But yeah, I'll be honest, I'm a little greedy, I'm a little impatient, so please give me Carretzas and Constantelias from the start. Thank you very much, even though I personally am also very much in favor of Inacio getting starting minutes and developing him, because I think he's going to be also relatively instrumental. But that being said, I would like to find a spot for Bayer as well, but right now, if I look at the starting 11, I just don't have it. So unless you put him up top. So yeah, kind of difficult, but yeah, let's just see how it pans out. Honestly, we also don't need to meander forever here, knowing that Lars also wants to go on vacation relatively soon. But Lars, one last thing I would like to have you talk about a little bit is, of course, the BVB Frauen did have their season debut as well, a 3-0 win against Bielefeld, and you were at the game, albeit no Guinness, as we had discussed on the previous episode. But nevertheless, how was it?
Good. 4,500 fans for a third division women's game on a Thursday evening in the Rote Erde is certainly nothing to scoff at. Obviously, it being the first game of Alexander Popp and it being summer vacation time here in North Rhine-Westphalia probably played a part. I'm not expecting to see this many people when I go to games in, let's say, October or November. But the atmosphere definitely was nice. Obviously, there wasn't too much organized support or anything. But I think for the critics, not necessarily of women's football, because we don't even need to give them any sort of airtime or whatever, but the critics specifically of Dortmund's approach, them possibly pushing out teams or clubs that have been active in women's football for a long time, mostly speaking of SG Essen, is it Schönebeck, who have a long history in women's football, who are kind of on the receiving end of Dortmund's ascendancy, if that makes sense. But to all those critics, I would just say go to one game in the Rote Erde and see how many young girls and young women are walking around with a Dortmund shirt that doesn't have Vodafone on the front, but the Rewe sponsorship, because that is the women's jersey. And I saw so many women's football jerseys from Dortmund. It was quite impressive. And, a very large contingent, larger than I would say in, the men's game of female fans. And I can definitely see a lot of young girls watching Alexandra Popp score a double in her first competitive game for Dortmund and think about that could be me one day. And for decades and decades, that wasn't possible. So it's definitely a positive development. The game was obviously dominated by Dortmund against Bielefeld, who last season were third, and 2 draws against Bielefeld is kind of why Dortmund are in the third division now and not maybe promoted to the second Bundesliga. I'm expecting Dortmund to kind of breeze through the league. Maybe the derbies against Schalke might be considered somewhat of a stumbling block, but other than that, it should be a breeze for towards promotion, which given the talent that they've added, not only with Alexander Popp, but a few other players as well, is to be expected. It's definitely worth going to the Rote Erde, which is obviously a historic ground. It was actually my first game in the Rote Erde because I never went to any under 23 games there. And unlike you, Stefan, I'm not from the area, so I didn't do my Bundesjugendspiele or whatever in the Rote Erde. So it was my first time. I obviously have a season ticket, so I'm going to go again. But I'm encouraging everyone who can make a day of it. It's a nice experience.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I'm craving a Bratwurst in the Rote Erde right now and a nice cool beer in my hand. Honestly, that's something I always love and will try to do as much as I possibly can. Right now, don't have that opportunity. Any last thoughts, Matthias, going into the season? Since we, had a lot of predictions, but overall, how optimistic are you? Just, vibe-wise, don't need to really riff on, but I just want to have one last sort of vibe check here before we end the show.
Well, I'm Mr. Sunshine.
Exactly.
So,
that's why I'm asking you.
No, I'm optimistic. I'm generally always optimistic when a season starts. Tend to only get my teeth kicked in come late November. But no, I'm optimistic. I'm actually genuinely optimistic. Not just, hey, it's a new season, let's keep going. I really hope Dortmund don't kill my optimism like Tottenham did over the weekend. But I don't think they will because they're just significantly better side. So no, I think this will be a fun and entertaining season for Dortmund.
Good. I'm extremely pumped. Lars, don't ruin this.
No, I'm not. I'm not only pumped for the new season, genuinely like Matthias, but I'm also pumped for a new era of the Yellow Wall Pod, I think we can say, because obviously people can now watch us on YouTube, and I'm making the solemn promise as of right now that I'm going to buy some sort of ring light or whatever, because the light is quickly fading here in Dortmund, and obviously me being 6 hours ahead, or maybe it's 7 to Matthias, I don't know how Central Time works. It's getting dark, and I apparently need to buy some lighting, so that is something that I'm going to do.
No, I think the holy mark above your head is perfect, actually.
You can definitely see what we call Geheimratsecken, because the light is reflecting off my temple, and I don't like that, so I'm going to buy a ring light. And Stefan, what are our calls to action? What do people need to do to help us on YouTube?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, you need to like and subscribe. And also shout out to our Patreons, because we are doing this via Riverside, and that was not a free subscription. So thank you very much for all our patrons. So you can go on patreon.com. I think we need to update a little bit. But yeah, like, subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell icon, all the good stuff. I think you can even hype. Matthias, you actually have a little bit more experience with that sort of thing. Did I forget anything?
Mm-hmm. No, like, subscribe, share, and click the little bell icon so you're reminded when we're back
and
on.
Comment anything, because comments are good for the YouTube algorithm, as every Pokemon challenge streamer I watch tells me all the time.
All right, yeah, maybe we need to find an algorithm word of the show. This one will be Geheimratsecken, so drop that into the... No, honestly. But please share with us how hyped you are for the season, because we are pretty much pumped. I hope that came through a little bit. But yeah, thank you all as always for listening. We'll be back with another episode next week. And until then, enjoy your weekend, enjoy the game. Goodbye.